I guess the big thing, we addressed it on the 5 o'clock show. I'm sure we'll address it with you on air when we do it live. But what's the impact here locally on, let's say, start first with the Valadeo and Salas race, a race where Trump maybe doesn't play, but maybe he does play based on conservative policies and values right now. Whoever
Sure.
wants it.
I'll take debate. So look, I think the biggest challenge that any candidate, any Republican candidate in particular in this race has now is how how do they want to run when the Democrats level the charge, convicted felon Donald Trump? And that creates some very awkward situations for hardcore Republican voters. It's not going to matter, but in close races, I think that it remains to be seen as to what the effect will be. What's the effect going to be on suburban women? What's the effect going to be on Republican voters who were not necessarily pro-Trump, but they were pro-Republican? Now that he's been convicted, it could have an impact. I think it's too early to tell which way the wind's going to blow on this issue, but I can guarantee you this: both Republican and Democratic campaigns are already polling on this question to try to figure it out.
I 100% agree with that. I do think that it's way too early to tell. I'm also extremely interested to see what the polling looks like. I know that based on a poll, it was a Yahoo/YouGov poll that came out just a week ago. 26% of Americans were unsure whether they thought that Trump was guilty or not. So I'm really interested to see where those 26% of Americans go. I know that Republicans will try to say, well, like, oh no, it's a sham trial, and we're gonna get all of that support. But ultimately, now the former president is a convicted felon. I don't really know that that moves people's minds in a positive direction. But we'll see what the polling looks like over the next few weeks here.
I know you said it's too early to decide, getting to see what might happen, how it might impact really tight races. But the Latino vote here is very, very, they don't come out in voting blocks very like a lot of the times, but it's still a huge portion of the population here and it's untapped. Do you think this might have an impact in the way they vote or their sway or anything?
Go ahead, Brittany.
Sure. So I know that Trump has been doing a good job of garnering some of the Hispanic vote, Black Americans, and some of those demographics that perhaps traditionally haven't been Republican. I'll say that if you're a MAGA supporter, you are going to support Trump regardless of this decision today, no matter what happens, during sentencing or his trial next week. So I don't know that. Again, no voting block is a monolith. Obviously, everyone is an independent thinker in their own right. But I don't know that this necessarily is going to move the needle one way or another immediately when it comes to the Hispanic vote.
I would agree with that, although I will tell you, I think that people are going to move in two distinct ways. There are going to be some people that are going to see what happened that weren't necessarily Trump supporters or MAGA supporters, and they're going to say, our justice system is unfair. It is not right. What happened to Donald Trump is not good. I'm going to support him because he's going to fix a system that's broken. And there are going to be others, and it's not going to break down, Black, Latino, white, Republican, Democrat. It's going to be a smattering of both. But there are going to be others that are going to say, I still believe that America is a fair country. A jury of 12 men and women have convicted someone of a crime who happens to be running for president of the United States. Something's not right here. I'm going to weigh that heavily when I make my vote. And look, I'm still processing what this ultimately means. I know that Donald Trump is not barred from running for president because he has been convicted by a jury of 34 felony counts. However, I know that he would much rather run not having those 34 convictions than having those 34 convictions. So, I mean, look, we say this about Donald Trump a lot. We are in unprecedented waters here. This has never happened before in the almost 250 years of our country. And for voters not to be able to process information rationally is not a surprise, because political consultants and people who follow politics are not being able to process rationally. This is so new and so raw. We're still trying to sort it out.
And to just like piggyback off of Matt's point, it's really ironic that a convicted felon can run for president of the United States, but a convicted felon wouldn't be able to get the top security clearance needed to work in the West Wing of the White House. So this is completely uncharted waters, and I think that this will set a precedent for the future. Hopefully this doesn't keep happening in American politics. I like to think no one is above the law, but I think that our president should especially be following the rule of law to the fullest extent. And so, it's regardless of how you feel about Trump, whether you love him or hate him, today is definitely a sobering moment in American history.
Yeah, and I will add, there is a 100% certainty that this case will be appealed by Donald Trump. I think that you can talk to people of a variety of legal philosophies, and Judge Merchant had some very troubling decisions in this case. He gave some very questionable orders to the jury, and he made some questionable statements during the trial. So this will certainly be heard on appeal, but the wheels of justice move slowly in America, and that will not happen until after the November election. So Donald Trump will go through the 2024 election cycle with the moniker of convicted felon Donald J. Trump in front of his name. And I would imagine that every Democrat across the nation, whether you're running for dog catcher or president, will become very familiar with that moniker.
The most kind of equivalent, I don't know if it might be that scandal that a president faced, kind of the Watergate scandal with Nixon. Do you think we might see something at that time? I know it was a really bad look for him. Do you think we'd see something similar happening with Trump? Or I'm not too familiar. It's just
there's really no comparison between what happened with Donald Trump and with the Watergate scandal and Richard Nixon. Let's not forget, Richard Nixon, there was never a criminal trial. There had been at least 3 separate criminal trials for Donald Trump. And 2, Richard Nixon resigned the presidency before the House considered articles of impeachment, in large part because he was advised by both Republicans and Democrats that not only would it pass the House, it would have been confirmed by the Senate. So he resigned. That put the issue to bed. Gerald Ford then pardoned Richard Nixon, and then Jimmy Carter beat Gerald Ford in 1976, and the Democrats made massive victories in 1974 in the congressional races that preceded that presidential race. 2024, it's a totally different story. Donald Trump is still the front runner. If the election were held today, he would still win. I don't know if you'll be able to say that next week, but you can say that right now. And in all likelihood, the Republicans will retake the Senate and have a pretty decent chance of keeping the House. So no similarity whatsoever, other than they were both scandals involving presidents.
I'd also add that you have to consider the fact that Trump is very well loved and revered within the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. And I know we already talked about this, but there will never be another candidate like Trump. I know that people have tried to cosplay as him in all of these, at the trial, during these press conferences, dressed in the blue suit with the red tie and, trying to hone in that Trumpism, but it always falls flat. And I think that he has been able to tap into, and here's the thing, is that there will be so many critics, especially sort of Democrats, are like, oh, how could anyone ever vote for Donald Trump? He's, a tyrant and he's done all of these terrible things. But he's been able to tap in to something that no one else has been able to do. Him as a billionaire, he's able to say, these people are out to get me. But in reality, when they're trying to get me, they're really going after you. And people buy it and they believe it. And a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. And they feel that, and they say that he's doing this for them, that he is he's a billionaire. He doesn't have to do this, but he's doing this for us. So it's just a very unique situation that Trump has been able to tap into something that I've never seen done before politically.
And I will add, I've already received my first internet solicitation from Donald Trump talking about how he's a victim and he is a political prisoner. So that's the start. The second, WinRed, which is the Republican with a platform that Republicans use to raise money, it crashed because of so many people going there to donate to Donald Trump. What this verdict will do is it's going to galvanize Republicans behind Donald Trump. Many of them. It will also turn some off. And again, we are waiting to see how many, but it's going to galvanize a lot of Republicans. And I do believe, maybe not in California, but California is not determinative from an election standpoint. It will get people to look at this and say, I am for fairness. What happened to Donald Trump? I don't like him, but what happened to New York City wasn't fair. He got railroaded. Donald Trump's the only one that can fix this. And Joe Biden is not eloquent enough to talk reasonably about what this happened and why it means. He can yell and scream and blabber on, but it's not going to move the needle. The Democrats don't have a good communicator for a arguably complex issue.
I know, Brittany, you've worked with Nikki Haley. How important is this vice presidential pick in trying to appease voters that maybe who like this decision today, or it didn't sway them much, and then those that you have to start reeling back into the Trump fold?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few options here. You can get someone who has sort of gone under the radar, doesn't have a lot of name ID, who isn't going to overpower Trump when it comes to the media. Obviously, he's a huge figure and probably no one could anyway. So there's that aspect to consider. And also people perhaps who did not like Trump in the past, like a Marco Rubio or someone who had come out previously against him and now has supported him. I think that in order to get those sort of Nikki Haley voters or, the anti-Trump voters that may still be willing or on the fence, pulling someone like that into the VP slot, it might help win those people over.
Absolutely. The vice president can't win you an election, but it can lose you an election if you choose poorly. Donald Trump needs to make a sound decision, someone who will bring him something that he already doesn't have. So there are a lot. Look, the Republicans have a deep bench. There are a lot of candidates that he could choose from. The Democrats are stuck with an 81-plus-year-old candidate, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, who is effective at talking about one issue only, and that's abortion. And that's not going to play well in big chunks of the United States.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Murcia with Eyewitness News Bakersfield Now on YouTube. Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel where we have tons of great content to choose from. While you're here, go ahead and click on the subscribe button right there. That way you can stay up to date on all the things related within Kern County. Thanks for watching.